Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 117. And the title of this episode is The Economic Collapse is Like a Tornado. It Destroys Anything in Its Path. And before I get started, I just have a couple announcements. I just want to welcome all the new people who've been subscribing on YouTube and who have been signing up for the alerts on the x22report.com site. For those people who don't know it, I update the Sentinel alerts every single day. I pull information from various news sources. I comment on them, and I try to do this pretty much all day long. So if you go, there's a little tab up top on the website. It says Sentinel Alerts. Just click on it, and that will bring you to the page. And then you'll also see a menu that drops down, and you will see all the archive events that I've been collecting. And for those people who don't know this, but when I do a report on the x22report.com site, on the page itself for the report are all the source links that I use for the report. So if you want to go look something up or anything like that, and sometimes I even mention to go there and look up a link, and this way you just know that everything is on that page. And I also have other things on the site, and we also have the people. A lot of people are joining that. It's a forum, it's free, and it's just a lot of people just discussing the economic collapse, how to be prepared, talking about gardening tips, talking about gold and silver, talking about the current events of what is going on. So that is a great place to sign up. You don't have to use your real name. You can use a handle or some other name. And you can get right on there and start talking to people that have been on there for quite a while and new people who have been signing up lately. All right, let's get into the economic collapse news. And let me just say, this collapse that is coming will be like a tornado. It will crash through and destroy anything in its path. It doesn't really matter. And we can see this, pretty much across Europe right now, and in Cyprus, real estate prices post record plunge. And this is really not a big surprise. Cyprus has been under capital controls for over 100 days already. Accounts are frozen. People can't open new accounts. Money's not being loaned out. And it's not really a surprise that real estate prices are starting to plunge, because there are no new businesses starting anything. People are afraid to invest in Cyprus, and who wants to buy a home or commercial real estate or anything there? I wouldn't. And we can see that prices have dropped by 12.6%, and things are not getting better, because when you pile on debt, rob the people of their money, freeze their money, don't allow new investors in, the economy cannot grow. It's completely impossible. And we are seeing this not just in Cyprus, we're also seeing this in Greece. And also, when you have such high unemployment, and people aren't working and putting money back into the system and helping out the retail stores, this cannot sustain itself. And we're seeing this in many, many countries. And this article goes on to say that the market is going to deteriorate further and faster than before. There is no lending available, and people's money is blocked. Plain and simple. You can't, that pretty much says it all. Now, here in America, we're seeing many corporations reporting that their profits are down, companies aren't doing well, retail stores are closing, retail is laying off people. UPS came out saying the second quarter profits are down by 4%, and that is a direct reflection of people not shipping, plus, which is part of their huge business, businesses aren't shipping. And if they're not shipping, that just goes to show you that there are problems that, especially retail, Retail is probably a huge amount of business for UPS with shipping merchandise. Now, if people are not purchasing as much as they used to because they don't have the disposable income and the unemployment, if you don't use the government calculation and you use the calculation back from prior to 1994, we're looking at unemployment around 23% or so, and especially in the youth population, which is very close to 50%. We are not seeing people purchase on the internet and have their items shipped, or they're not shipping items and other businesses are not shipping items. So we're seeing this all over the place. Now, I know that the government and the Fed, they're telling you everything is getting better. We're going to taper because the economy is getting better. Of course, they're doing it for another reason. They tell that to all the people who are listening to the mainstream media where they tell everyone that everything's okay and the Fed is going to start to pull back on the QE because the economy is doing so well. Well, that's not the real reason. They're pulling back on QE because they're creating massive bubbles in the Treasury bond, in the stock market, in uh, the student loan market, because the Fed is the market today, and they realize that this thing is building up too fast, and they need to ease off a little bit because governments and the central banks are not prepared or not yet ready to let this thing go. And even though they're telling us that things are getting better, we see that, like in cities like Detroit, where they filed the papers for bankruptcy, and of course, people are fighting them on it that that they have to prove that they need to go into bankruptcy. But we see in other places like Chicago, they're firing around 2,000 school staff because of cuts, and they're closing schools. Now, when an economy is doing well and things are prosperous, we don't close and fire people. We expand because there's more business. And if we look around the world, we see unemployment very high. We see businesses laying off. We see people having a very tough time finding work, and when they do, it's a part-time or two part-time jobs to make up the difference of the one job they had before. And even so, they're not making the same amount of money. And we are seeing this problem not just in corporations reporting their earnings. We're also seeing this in real estate. The first-time home buyers right now is kind of in a slump because you have to remember the youth population that's coming out of college in their 20s, moving into their 30s. Normally, they get married, they look for a small house, and they purchase this house because they have this job and they save their money. But when the youth employment is so high and people can't get work coming out of college in the degree they went to study, there is a problem. And we're seeing this now where typically couples in their late 20s or 30s who historically have accounted for about 40% of home sales, that has dropped to around 25% now. So they are not driving the market anymore looking for that starter home. What was driving the market was the hedge funds with government subsidies, the REO to rent, loans loading up on distressed properties, foreclosed properties, foreign investors who are paying in cash, and plus the Fed purchasing toxic real estate at $45 billion a month. So the drive for this housing market is not there. And, we're starting to see other agencies and other places report that things are not going well. The Richmond Fed Index shows mammoth fall in retail sales. And the retail sales contracted this month, leaving the index at negative 22, 23 points below last month's reading. Sales of big-ticket items declined slightly, while shopper traffic dwindled. The index for big-ticket sales slipped to negative 5, a point lower than in June, while the index for shopper traffic tumbled 22 points to negative 16. So, and what we're seeing because of this, and I discussed this in previous episodes, there was an article in the USA Today, and I have it linked here on this page, where it says Richmond Fed Index shows mammoth fall in retail sales. There's a link where it says closing stores, and you can see the thousands of stores that are being closed by Best Buy, Radio Shack, Barnes & Noble. We see GameStop is another one of them, JCPenney, and we're seeing this. And because of this, guess what happens? People lose work. And this goes on to say that retailers reduced their number of employees this month because of what is happening. When stores close and they're not doing the business, they have no place to put these people but to lay them off. And if all these major chains are closing these stores, they're laying off a lot of people. Now the Fed's worst nightmare is becoming reality, and we call that inflation. And this was in Market Watch, and they're saying that wholesale prices in June surged for the second straight month, rising a whopping 0.8%, the fastest rate since last September. Consumer prices jumped 0.5% in June. And we are seeing this, and especially in energy and food. And as you know, the government, the Fed, they don't count this in their inflation calculation because, of course, they change their calculation to make it seem like everything is okay. But as I know for myself, with my family, what do I spend the most on? Fuel and food. And that is a constant. That is something you do every single week. I don't go out and purchase an HD TV every single week. I go out and I purchase food. I purchase fuel for my car. So when things get tough and those prices rise, guess what happens? I divert my money from other things that I were going to do because I can't afford them because food is rising and gas is rising. And the same goes with everyone else. If you're on a tight budget and you are either underemployed or you don't have work, that's even worse, it is very difficult to go into a store and buy other things as food and fuel continually rise. It makes it very difficult to buy anything else. So for them not to include this in their calculation is absolutely ridiculous. Now, we know that the debt ceiling is the argument between the Republicans and the Democrats are going to come up, and this is a bunch of BS because, the Republicans said they're not going to raise the debt ceiling unless we have cuts, which I'm a little confused about this. Now, we had the sequester, which was an automatic cut to the system. It doesn't seem like the spending has stopped. So even if they get these cuts, what is going to be the difference? They're still going to have to raise the debt ceiling. And guess what? The debt's going to rise because they're going to borrow, because they're going to spend. And guess what? In a year from now, depending on how far how high they raise the debt ceiling, they're going to have the same discussion. Because if you look back, they've done it 14 times already. Yeah, they'll raise it, to last for, they'll calculate it out like they did this time. It will last 2 years, December, after the next elections, so we'll be good until then. But who cares? These cuts, these ridiculous things, and what they're fighting about is ridiculous. Because guess what? The debt is going to keep rising because they need the money to pay everything. So all this arguing back and forth is meaningless. The only way to stop this is just to stop spending, period. But if they do that, everything collapses. So this whole argument that you see in the news about the Republican, we got to cut this, we got to cut that, it's baloney. The debt will always rise because you know what the cuts are? It's like a household saying, okay, listen, we have debt of 20,000. We're making 15,000 a year. We're going to cut out a quarter, 25 cents every month. Okay, let's get another credit card. I mean, really, what does that do? It does absolutely nothing. And this is what we're talking about here. Okay, let's move on here. Now, Turkey is going to respond to Syria if they fire on their people across the border. And it goes on to say the Turkish army has announced that it will respond in multiples to fire coming from the Syrian side of their shared border. Again, here I am just trying to make common sense here. Now, Assad is going to start another war with Turkey, and he's going to risk this by firing on the people across the border. Or do you think it's the paid mercenaries that the U.S. government hired, which are 95% not Syrian, who are creating this problem? Assad has come out time and time again saying that he'd like to sit down and talk about peace, but the United States government and the central bankers do not want peace. The only way they'll get peace is if they agree to their terms. What are their terms? Let us put the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. Assad, you are removed, and we're going to put in a Western central bank. And then we're going to move into Iran and do the same thing. This is our deal. This is what we want. And this is what the U.S. government central bankers are saying. And right now, Turkey, which is controlled by who? The U.S. government, central bankers, because it's a strategic location right by Russia, right by Middle East. And Turkey deployed military units along its border with Syria following clashes between Syrian Kurdish armed party of Al-Qaeda. How interesting. And right now, the Turkish F-16 jets and unmanned aerial vehicles had been scrambled from southeastern Turkey for patrolling over the border. So they are in place to push this Syrian war forward to get them involved. Now, Russia right now is holding some snap check drills, and the headquarters and 2 missile divisions of the Orenburg Missile Army in Russia have been put on high alert, and as part of their snap combat readiness drills. And you can see this all across the area where Syria and Iran, Japan and China, North Korea, South Korea, this whole area is getting prepared for some type of war. Putin in Russia knows this is inevitable, and he knows that this is going to happen because he knows what the central bankers and the U.S. government want, and he knows that Syria will never give in to this, and he knows eventually Israel and the U.S. government are going to invade Syria, then move in and go through Iran. And Russia and China are backing them, and he knows that if this happens, war is going to break out. And right now, U.S. and the Russia are both arming each side. The U.S. is arming their paid mercenaries with weapons. Congress has allowed the weapons to flow into the Syrian rebels' hands. They've gotten the green light. And Russia is completing their arms agreement with the Syrian government, delivering their S-300 surface-to-air missiles and other weaponry. And we can see each government is taking sides at this point. Now, a former U.S. Marine says any foreign military intervention in Syria would instigate a third world war by getting Russia involved in the conflict. And we know this is going to happen. We know that there's no way that the U.S. and Israel are not going in. They've been talking about chemical weapons of mass destruction, and they've been trying to make their case. They've been pushing the rebels, but they've been losing the battle. They're supplying them with weapons. Russia is supplying Syrian government with weapons, and we can see that this is going to come to a head, and something is going to happen. And this goes on to say Russia has made very, very clear that they would not sit by and allow yet another country to be bombarded and effectively raped and pillaged in terms with the empire's designs. Very interesting. He said a third world war was possible with even thinking about military intervention. Whatever it is, whether it is using some high-tech weapons, secretly weapons and whatnot, the bottom line is that we are attempting the Third World War, and we know this to be true. And there are reports now that the United States is training in North Carolina to move into Syria once the president gives the green light to secure the chemical weapons that Washington alleges that Syria has. And we can see that they are getting prepared for this. This is not something where they're going to say, let's have this war drag out for the next 9 years. They really can't at this point. They've been doing this and having these rebels fight, but Syria, their Syrian government, is much stronger than they thought. The collapse is coming. They know they can only sustain this for so long. Now is the time to make the move and to cover the economic collapse with this world war. And we can see this is coming, and I know this is a scary thing. It's being built up, and we're seeing this happen all over the world right now, where each country is moving and taking precautions, having drills, and getting ready for what is going to happen. Now, how do we know here in America that the collapse is getting closer and closer? Well, I mean, we saw Naomi Wolf with her 10 steps, and I have it on the site. If you scroll all the way down on the right-hand side, it's under articles under people's rights, and you can read her article. And I also have indicators on the site on the sidebar where the government, taxes the people more, takes away their rights, and takes away a lot of their free speech. Takes away their right to be searched and spied on, which is the Fourth Amendment. That has been taken away by the NSA surveillance, and we're seeing all of our rights. And actually, on yesterday's report, I have a link there to the WhiteHouse.gov, where they're even rewriting the Bill of Rights, the First, Second, Third, Fourth Amendment, and they're completely, rewrote what it said, and it's almost like they're giving each person privileges where they could be taken away later on. But we see now that Obama, they want to get rid of the self-defense stand your ground rule, and this is because, of course, the Zimmerman case. This is the event that happened because they don't want people defending themselves when they are put in a bind where they feel their life is threatened. And this goes on here. The president said, "We're sending a message as a society in our communities that someone who is armed potentially has the right to use those firearms, even if there's a way for them to exit from a situation. Is that really going to be contributing to the kind of peace and security and order that we'd like to see?" Now listen, if I have a weapon and someone's attacking me and they have a knife, what am I supposed to do? Run? And they run after me? No. You stand your ground and you use self-defense to defend your life. And they're trying to get rid of this because eventually, when the collapse comes and DHS and local law enforcement and other military personnel are out there gathering the people and bringing them to um, um, different locations because they're on a list, you have every right to defend yourself. And they're trying to get rid of this so you do not have the right to defend yourself. But what's funny about this, in 2004, Obama co-sponsored a bill in the Illinois Senate that expanded the state's 1961 Stand Your Ground law. So now he's going back on that, and he's saying that we shouldn't have this. And the only reason he's saying we shouldn't have this is because they need to take away more rights for each person because the collapse is coming. And you can see this with them rewriting the Bill of Rights on the whitehouse.gov. Just go back to episode 116, scroll down, and there's a link there that says the Constitution. It's pretty close to the bottom of the page. That will bring you over to whitehouse.gov, and if you want to just listen to episode 116, you can do that too. It shows you how they rewrote each of the amendments, and talking about the people's rights. The NSA holds emergency hearings to fight off anti-surveillance amendment in Congress. Now, I hate to say this. The NSA has violated the Fourth Amendment. They have no rights. They are criminals. They should be put in jail. They violated the Fourth Amendment. They're spying on people without warrants. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's the people's right not to be searched without a warrant, not to be spied on, not to have their effects seized, or anything like that. Okay. Now, the TSA is going to make it easier for people, so you don't have to take your shoes off when you go to the airports and stuff. They're going to pre-screen you. And for that, all you have to do is pay them $85, let them see all of your internet history of all the places you search and you go, and allow them to take your fingerprints, and you can be pre-screened. And this is a really a fantastic thing. No, it's not. Pre-screened, this is ridiculous. So let me see. If I take an ID of someone who's pre-screened, change the picture on there, go to the airport, just show them I can walk right in right now. Plus, this is against the Fourth Amendment again. To see your personal information, and you're giving your fingerprints, you're letting them into your personal life, so you can board a plane without them physically searching you, which is again a violation of the Fourth Amendment. All of this is null and void according to Madison and Mulberry, where it says anything repugnant to the Constitution is null and void, and this is completely against the Fourth Amendment, and this is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard of. Now, I talk about cyber attacks a lot, and for those who are new to these reports, I do believe that cyber attacks are going to be the main event, but I found something very interesting here. U.S. more prolific source of cyber attacks than China. This goes on to say that there is a lot of attacking activity coming out of the U.S. than actually coming into the U.S., which I find it very interesting because the U.S. is making the case, and you can see Mike Rogers yesterday in yesterday's episode where he's saying that the infrastructure and these attacks are coming more often, and we are unprepared, we're vulnerable, and this is a virtual, cyber attack, Pearl Harbor on America. But what's interesting is he is the one who wrote CISPA, which is pending in the Senate, and he's out there going around explaining how bad cyber attacks are. And this right there goes to show you that something will happen. Because why? Let's just think about this for a sec. Why are these bills pending in the Senate? The UN Arms Treaty, the gun bill, and CISPA, because they are waiting for an event to happen to get them through. Why are the U.S. troops training in North Carolina for an invasion in Syria? Because they're waiting for an event for them to go into Syria. And what are these events I'm talking about? I'm talking about false flag events, where they wait for an event to occur, or they create one. And for the ones who are training in North Carolina going to Syria, they are waiting for something to happen where they can blame it on Syria. It could be a dirty bomb. It could be a chemical weapon. It could be a biological weapon. I personally think it probably might be chemical, because we're dealing with chemical weapons, but it could be anything. And they will blame it on Syria, and people will die. People will get hurt. It will be horrific and bloody, and Congress and the American people will then beg for America to go into Syria. And lo and behold, we have troops ready and trained to go. The other things, the gun bill and the UN Arms Treaty, some type of shooting, some type of horrific event will happen to get those passed. They're always waiting for something to happen. CISPA, we're waiting for some type of, small cyber attack, which I think might happen in the fall, because I discussed about this part one of the collapse coming around the fall time period, and I believe it will happen at that period. And this is when I think you will see the bail-ins, where banks' accounts are frozen. You can also see cyber attacks at this point, where another country, it could be, they could also use this as a way to get us into Syria. Syria, with their Syrian hackers, broke into the banks, caused this mini collapse because they siphoned off the money from the banks. And we need to go get them. And a lot of people will now have, less money in the banks. The economy collapses. They have to freeze the accounts. They have to implement capital controls. The wealth will be lost from the majority of the people. The stock market will plummet. The Treasury bond market will plummet. Real estate will completely take a dive, and the Fed will say, and the U.S. government will say, this was the cause of Syria. Let's get into war. And they will start pumping the market up once again with more QE, because of what has occurred is people have lost a lot of money. Real estate is in the dumps. The real estate market, the stock market and the Treasury bond market is in the dumps, and the Fed will start really over printing, and now we'll be printing, instead of 85 billion, it'll be like something like 150 or 200 billion every single month to get this propped up again. And then again, in the spring time someplace, the whole thing will just eventually just fall apart. And this is what we're looking at. Listen, everyone, I really appreciate you listening to me. And those people who have donated, really, thank you very much. And this does help pay for the servers and everything that I do here. Again, there's no corporate people sponsoring me or anything like that, so I really do appreciate it. And everyone, please start preparing now. If you haven't purchased food, if you haven't purchased provisions, if you haven't purchased seeds, anything like that, even gold and silver at this point, I would start doing it. If you haven't started taking any money out of the bank and just keeping it out of the system, I would start doing that. But everyone, thank you very much for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thank you.